Welcome back, MTN Nets podcast. It's been a while since I made a video or a podcast, and I was like, you know what? The finals are over. Let's do it. The draft's in like 8 days. It's crazy how like quickly the draft is after the season, right? So the season ends on the 17th, and the draft is on I think the 28th. 26th. Yeah, 26th. So it's like a week and a half away. It's just crazy. Like the NFL is like 2 months you have to wait. So it's kind of weird how that works. But anyway, so we'll talk about the finals, the playoffs, mostly the finals because the playoffs this year were not that great and the finals were not great, but we'll talk about it. And we'll talk about some of the big picture Brooklyn Nets stuff, some of the latest rumors, the Nick Claxton stuff. Will they trade Mikal Bridges? All those sort of things. I hope you guys enjoy. Leave a like, subscribe, all that, and let's get into it. So the Boston Celtics, they get banner number 18, I believe it is, and I think they went 16-3 in the entire playoffs. So not one of their series went past 5 games, which is a dream. It's really a dream. Like as a sports fan who lives and dies with their teams to win I almost said World Series, to win a finals and not have to go to a game 6 in any series. It's so nice and low stress and everything. I think the only scare Boston fans had was for like 2 hours after Porzingis went down in game 2 against the Heat back in the first round, when they thought he might have like tore his Achilles, but then he had a strained calf and he would be fine. So that was like the one couple hour window where Celtics fans had to sweat. But aside from that, it was pretty stress free. I think some Celtics fans may have been a bit concerned coming into last night because, oh my God, what if we give up a 3-0 lead? But I don't think it was ever going to happen. I am a Celtics hater. I do not like that team. They have a lot of, I don't want to just say this about the whole fan base, but they have some fans that are apparently not the best people. I'm not a Jason Tatum guy. He just seems like a front runner to me. Just acts tough when he's up and very corny from what we saw last night, obviously. So not a Tatum guy, but to their credit and with the help of us and Billy King, they finally execute. And they go all the way this time. They came very close in 22. They were 2 games away. They were close in 2018. I think 2017 they were somewhat close. Last year they were a game away from the finals and pulling off the first 3-0 comeback ever. That fell a bit short. So they finally get it done. And, they were definitely a top 3 team in the NBA this year. They finished the year with like a crazy record. It was like they were something like 80 something and 20. It's just insane. Like we probably had 20 losses by the time December hit. So just a great year by them overall. And they did benefit from some injury luck. I feel like aside from Porzingis, nobody really got hurt. Derek White was fine, Drew was fine, Tatum, Brown, they were all good. So they did benefit from that, but like to their credit, like I know they play in the easier conference, and a lot of guys from the East, there were like 7 All-Stars from the East that got hurt this year, so it was kind of weird how that all worked. But I think either way, the Celtics were going to make the finals. I just would have liked to see them play a team like Denver, but it didn't happen, sadly, as they blew a 20-point lead in Game 7 to Minnesota. They go into the finals versus this Mavericks team where it's like you have the cool storyline of, oh, Kyrie's back in Boston. What if he beats them? And even me as a Celtics hater, I was like, I just don't think the Mavericks have the role players to beat this team. Like Boston can go 5 out. They move the ball so well. And I just felt like it was going to take such a elite series by Luka and even Kyrie to a degree to pull this off. Like I think the only way the Celtics would have lost this series was just a couple of bad injuries, like let's just say Brown and Derek White got hurt or something like that, or some other combination. Like that would have to happen, or the Celtics just beat themselves, which they didn't, to their credit. So my concern was I just didn't think that Derek Jones and PJ Washington and who else? I mean, yeah, Josh Green. I feel like guys like that were not going to show up in this series. Like the lights were too bright, sort of thing. And to a degree, it was true. I feel like Derek Jones did not have that great of a shooting series, and PJ Washington, he had his moments. He had a couple of tough floaters in game number 3 or 4. But the Mavericks, they just didn't have the personnel to win this series. I just didn't see it. And I think they kind of beat themselves in some ways. It really annoyed me because, once again, I wanted the Mavericks to win this series because It annoyed me because like they would overhelp on Tatum so much, and the guy, let's be honest, I mean there was a stat coming into I think the second round. I heard this on Bill Simmons' podcast how Tatum was shooting like somewhere in the low 30s on three pointers in the last two playoffs, or like last 2 years in the playoffs. And it's like, all right, let's make this guy beat us with jumpers. And I think Tatum on jump shots in the finals shot under 30%. So it's like, okay, he's struggling there. So why not give him like a couple of feet of space and play off him a bit? But they did the exact opposite of like playing in his grill and letting Tatum get a lot of easy passes, and some were very nice. Like Tatum, I think that was in the Indiana series I'm about to talk about, but that behind the back pass to Horford in the corner to, it was either ice the game or make it a 2 point game, I forget. But like that was a great pass. Like he had some great passes to his credit, but I think the Mavericks in a lot of cases kind of overhelped on Tatum. Like if I was Jason Kidd, I would have said, all right, let's see if this guy can beat us with some long 2 point shots, which of course analytically is what you want to give up. But it seemed like a lot of times they would just give him his right hand and he would get to the lane, and if bodies were there, he would kick it out. If not, he would just try to take it and get to the line or something like that. So I think the Mavericks could have done a better job defensively, but I think either way, they did not have the personnel to win this series. I said Celtics in 6 in the beginning, almost got it right. But I bet the Celtics to win the finals about a month and a half ago, because I just felt like with all the injuries going on, I never took the Knicks serious to beat the Celtics, and I feel like the only team that really could have gave them a shot was the Bucks if healthy. And then once Giannis was not coming back, and then Dame got hurt with the calf, it was like, all right. So I just went to DraftKings and just put like $80 on the Celtics to win 200 or something. So hey, I won that, so it's all good. And I had them winning in 5 exactly, which paid me a bit more, so that was nice. So that all worked out perfectly. But still, I hate the Celtics, and I didn't want that to happen. So it is what it is. But look, we've seen it as Brooklyn Nets fans. You need to be good, but you also have to have injury luck on your side. And once again, aside from Porzingis, the Celtics really had no injuries, and other teams did. Obviously, Boston got very lucky not facing Jimmy Butler at all. Terry Rozier. They missed Mitchell for half the series against Cleveland. Jared Allen did not play at all. Our former Jared Allen. And then versus Indiana, there was no Halliburton. And that Indiana series, it reminded me a lot of the 2022 Nets Celtics series, because although it was a sweep, it was like every game was close. Like they were right there. Game 1 was very similar in Boston. They had that game wrapped up. And I think the Pacers blew that game worse than we did in our Game 1. But it seemed like it was very similar, how like every single game came down to the last few possessions, but the Celtics, to their credit, they took every game. So just gave me some flashbacks to Nets Celtics 2022. So anyway, they're the 2023-24 NBA champions. Overall, just once again, not the best playoffs. I just feel like the playoffs this year were not that fun. I don't know. I could be a hater, but I just feel like overall, I've seen a lot of other people say the same thing. It's like, yeah, these playoffs suck, or this final sucks, and it's like, yeah, I mean, every game it was just a blowout. Like there was the one good game where I think it was game 2. I'm pretty sure, right? Yeah, game 2. The game where the Mavericks made the late comeback, and there was the play where Jaylen Brown kind of pushed PJ Washington in the back, and there was no call, and the Celtics may have gotten away with one there. And then I think it was game 3, and they came back down from 18 in the fourth quarter to make it a 3-point game, and then Luka fouls out, which is very controversial. And I think Luka, that's his own fault. Like, don't put yourself in that situation. Like, yeah, the refs probably couldn't have called that in that situation, and they challenged it. But you, as Luka Doncic, you can't put yourself in that situation. You can't draw that foul. The only reason the foul was called is probably because Jaylen Brown hit the floor. If he didn't, they probably just go on with no call. But he did, so it is what it is. But you can't put yourself in that situation. So, Luka has some maturing to do. Probably get himself in shape a bit more, obviously. But that feels like a missed opportunity for the Mavericks, because as we know, the Western Conference is very good. And I don't think the Mavericks would have gotten past Denver if they were to match up with them. But they faced Minnesota. They beat them in 5. And yeah, so we'll see what happens with Dallas going forward. Boston should be good for a bit. I think they have most of their guys coming back next year, but I would like to see them play some healthy teams next year. Like, I do want to see what a healthy Milwaukee does. Giannis would be motivated. I know Doc Rivers on Bill Simmons literally said that Damian Lillard was not in good shape last year, just came out and said it. So Dame in better shape, Giannis healthy. I'd like to see what that team can do. Maybe kind of move around some role players. I know Brook Lopez is up there in age, and maybe they move off of like Pat Connaughton or someone like that. So kind of, shuffle up some things there. And a team like Philly. Philly could be interesting. Tyrese Maxey emerging, coming into his prime. Embiid still in his prime. Got to be healthy, though. And if they get Paul George, that'd be interesting. I don't know if that's enough to beat Boston, but that big three, quote-unquote, if Paul George went there, that'd be interesting. So we'll see what happens there over the offseason. Now on to our Brooklyn Nets. Once again, the draft's up soon. We don't have a pick right now. There have been some rumors of the Nets maybe trying to get a pick. There's a chance they could trade Dorian Finney-Smith for a late first-round pick, which maybe you don't do because this draft is not that talented apparently, but at the same time, it's like, what's the point of keeping him? So I'm fine either way on that one. Like, I like Dorian, but it doesn't make sense to keep him. He's like 30, 31 now. I just don't see the point, so I would try to move off of him for a younger player. So, an article dropped today from the Action Network by Matt Moore, who's been covering the NBA for 17 seasons now. And there was little blurbs about a few teams in there, and our Brooklyn Nets were a team that was mentioned. The title was, Brooklyn Tries to Escape Purgatory Again. So I'll read this couple paragraphs here. I'm not a good reader, so bear with me here. But first off, there's little expectation that Mikal Bridges will wear a different uniform next season. Brooklyn has been willing to take calls for the versatile wing, but despite a disappointing season from Bridges in 23-24, the asking price is still considered too high. The Nets view him higher than anybody else, like everyone views their top guys, one source said. They'll take the call because of their situation, but no one's going to put forth a Godfather offer. They traded Kevin Durant for him, for crying out loud. Multiple sources said talks with Houston were mostly about simply returning the picks the Nets gave up in the James Harden deal, which Brooklyn would love, but that alone is not enough to send Bridges to Houston. And that's crazy. This is me talking now. Like, that's crazy because if they were offered all their picks back from Houston, I think there's 3 first-round picks left over, or it might be 4 actually. 24, 25, it might be 4. So anyway, if they were offered all their first-round picks back from Mikal Bridges and still said no, I just don't get that. Like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Mikal Bridges will be paired up with a star and things work out beautifully here. But just looking at it now based on our situation, it's like, just take the damn picks back. Like, what are you doing? So anyway, there is, however, a sense from teams that have talked with Brooklyn that the Nets want to choose a direction. Hallelujah. There have been conversations about moves for draft capital and young players and conversations about existing win-now pieces. Brooklyn would love a star to pair with Bridges. This isn't remarkable. Every team always wants another star to pair with their guys, even when they have 2. Looking at you, Suns. The only thing notable here is that Brooklyn isn't only looking at a long-term future. The Nets are trying to figure out a clear direction to take. Most teams are operating under the assumption that Nick Claxton won't hit the market and will instead return to Brooklyn on a multi-year deal in the $20 to $25 million annually range. So that's it for Brooklyn there on the little blurb. So my reaction is, hey, I love that little sentence about they want to pick a direction, because that's really all I care about right now is just don't do another year of this like, hey, we don't know what we're going to do. Let's stay in the middle. And ultimately they might still do that because they have to stay under the luxury tax, and Ben Simmons' money comes off the books after this season, so they may just wait till 2025 anyway. But it's nice to see that they know they have to take a direction. So Mikal Bridges, I'm assuming, will be here next year. It's just going to take a great offer to pry him away. But if I'm being offered all of the picks back from the James Harden trade, I'd probably make that move. I don't see why not. Just get younger and get your picks back, get back in control. The Nets pick that they originally had is now the 3rd overall pick, as we know. And while this is not considered a great draft, it's still a top 3 pick in the NBA draft. Like, I'm sure you could find somebody to be a high-end role player with the 3rd overall pick. And what's Mikal Bridges at his best? Probably a high-end role player. So, like, you ultimately can take a swing at a guy who is probably 18, 19 years old, that's going to be on a rookie deal that could be as good, if not better, than Mikal Bridges. So I think it makes sense to make that move and get all your picks back. But if they don't want to do that and feel confident about pairing him with a star down the line or maybe this offseason, then so be it. I hope that's what they do, but we'll see. For the Nick Claxton part, I mean, I would love it to be more closer to $20 than $25 million, but with like the TV deal and the salary cap going up, it's gonna look bad, but it's not gonna be as bad as it looks probably. So, it's just like having Nick Claxton and Cam Johnson under long-term contracts, making a lot of money. I don't love to see that because you want to give those big contracts to players that are like no doubt stars, and like Cam Johnson's a role player. Claxton, I feel like maybe he can get a bit better. Like he really was a defensive player of the year candidate in the half a season before Kyrie asked out that 1 year. That was last season. So like he has shown that he can play at a very high level and be a switchable big, which is really nice to have these days. But $25 million per year is a lot. So I just hope he could add a bit more to his game offensively. And there are some matchups where Claxton looks pretty invisible at times, like against bigger guys like a Valanciunas or someone of that mold. So hopefully he works on his game a bit more. So there was also the Brian Lewis article, which also hinted at a Nets rebuild coming up. And Lewis had a couple of articles in recent days about how the Nets are more leaning towards a rebuild rather than trying to win now, which is good to see. And you keep hearing whispers about the guy that the Nets are keeping their eye on is Giannis. But Giannis just signed the contract, I think, over last offseason. So it's like, I don't know, like, is he really going to get traded anytime soon? I mean, I don't know. So yeah, he signed the contract that hasn't even kicked in yet. So his contract is up in 2028. He has a player option for that year, so I'm assuming he'll take the $62 million. So if the Nets were to get Giannis, who I think is now, is he 30? I forget. No, he's 29. He's going to be 30 next year. So a 30-year-old Giannis is going to cost a ton of money. And like he should be good for like 5 or 6 more years. And I mean good by like elite. Like he should be elite for 5 or 6 more years, barring an injury. So, like, okay, I get it, but it's also like if you want Giannis, you have to trade like everything. So that's the downside to it. It's going to be like a James Harden trade all over again. So I've said before, I want this team to really rebuild. And I did like seeing that one part in the Action Network article saying that they want to go for young players and players that are already existing, players that are, in the league but young. So, someone like Jaden Hardy would have been a great trade over the deadline, because there was that clip of Dorian Finney-Smith saying that, like, and people were reading lips, so it's not like it's 100% like he said this, but I'm pretty sure after one of those Nets-Mavericks games, and I think it was the one in Brooklyn where Kyrie came back, and you can kind of see Dorian Finney-Smith say something like, oh, I'll be back soon or something. So, like, we kind of thought he was going to be a Maverick. So I was hoping that, like, a Dorian Finney-Smith for Jaden Hardy type trade would happen, but it didn't. But that'd be, like, an ideal target for this team. But it didn't happen. I've heard the name Darius Garland brought up, which would be nice. I feel like that's a good buy low opportunity. He broke his jaw last year, so the guy probably had some readjusting to do, because I'm sure coming back from a broken jaw is not easy. Like, you definitely are concerned about that when you're driving to the lane. So if you can get Darius Garland, who I think is 24, I'm going to just double check quickly. He's 24, yeah. So he turns 25 in January. If that's the guy you want to get, I say go for it. Like, that'd be a nice fit. He fits that age range of what you want, like under 25, and has a pretty high ceiling. It felt like a couple years ago he was really going to break out, but this year kind of took a bit of a step back. He was an all-star in 21-22. So, I mean, I don't know. If they really want to split up him and Mitchell does stay in Cleveland, I would say go get Darius Garland. You play him next to Cam Thomas, that might work out. I don't know if it's a perfect fit, but it's still 2 high-level scoring guards who can get by their man and create some offense. So I'm not opposed to it. I'll put it that way. And in free agency, the Nets have that they have the full non-tax mid-level exception, which is like a $13 million contract. So they can use that and sign a guy in free agency. I don't know who that will be. I guess in a different video we'll go over free agents. But they can find somebody for that number that's a pretty good role player, hopefully. So I'm hoping Sean Marks can find the right guy there. So either way, I say we just stay young. And if you can get Darius Garland or someone 25 or under that's already a pretty established player that has a high ceiling, I would say get a guy like that. If not, don't force it. Like, don't go out there and trade for a 29, 30, 31-year-old guy. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. If you can get the guy for nothing, then all right, fine, you can do that. But don't give up assets. Don't give up the Phoenix picks or anything like that. Just keep those tight to your chest, and hopefully in 3-4 years those picks will be great. So that's what I'm hoping for. On June 14th, so this was 4 days ago, there was that report from Fred Katz, who is a New York Knicks beat writer for The Athletic, and he basically said that where is it? So, according to league sources, Brooklyn's front office has told teams it views Bridges as a co-star to whichever big name it can trade for down the line. So it kind of backs up what the Action Network was saying before. So if Bridges is getting traded this offseason, it's going to be for a lot. So if he does get traded, I'll probably be happy because that means we got a ton for this guy. And if they keep him, then like, okay, but you're also wasting time and valuable time on that favorable contract, which I think runs for 2 more years. Yeah, so Bridges has a $23 million cap hit this upcoming season in 24-25. Then in 25-26, he's worth just under $25 million on the cap, which once again is a great contract, but he will be 29 in 2 years. He's, right now he's almost 28. So like, you're kind of wasting valuable time here. Like, if you traded him now as compared to next summer, you're probably going to get a lot more now. So, like, that's the scary part. Like, yeah, you can trade Bridges in the summer of 2025, but you may not get as much as you get now in the summer of 2024. So that's the difficult part about this, is you have to have foresight, which Sean Marks in the beginning definitely had, but recently, I mean, I can't really say the same. So I'm curious how this will play out. I just hope they do the right thing. And once again, let's build around Clowney. Let's build around Cam Thomas and Claxton and the young guys. And hopefully Dariq Whitehead comes around this year and stays healthy, hopefully. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's going to do it for the video once again. I don't think I missed anything about the playoffs. I was happy to see Jaylen Brown win MVP. I like Jaylen Brown a lot. I know Pooch came up last night on Twitter and said he put up the article of how the Nets tried to trade or they could have traded KD for Jaylen Brown and Derek White, which, like, come on, I didn't want to see that. And Pooch actually replied to me saying sorry, because I called him out. I'm like, man, I don't want to see this. So, I would have loved JB as a net. I really wanted to see what Jaylen Brown would be like as a number 1 option. Like, I feel like, and even Tatum this happens to as well, like, they kind of get held back because that team is so good. Like, they have such a good starting 5 that, like, you're not going to see Tatum or Brown score, like, 50 points anytime soon. So, I don't know. It's probably a good thing, though, because it showed in the playoffs and in the finals that even in the nights where Tatum or Brown were off and didn't have their best night, they were still winning games. So that's great to have. We'll see what happens in the offseason. I'll talk to you guys after the draft probably, because there is a chance they trade up for a pick or try to get a pick, and maybe Finney-Smith is given to a team for a late first or something like that. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like, and I'll talk to you guys next time.